Gregor. Kevin, what do you see as the top priority for yourself and the organization going into the off season?
Well, like any off season, obviously you take some time to decompress a little bit, reevaluate, go over just the past season, dissect it a little bit. So certainly we'll take some time and do that. That obviously that process has begun. Then, as a manager, there's certain, summer functions that do come into play here. We're getting ready for the draft. We're getting ready for the expansion draft, and then obviously getting ready for, free agency. So there's lots of work behind the scenes in those regards. But, obviously it's evaluating, where things are at and what you have in your, stable of players moving forward, and what directions that and actions that you need to take for the future.
Go back to Ken Weeb for a follow-up. Go ahead, Weaver.
Kevin, what role, if any, did the potential for the entry-level slide play in the number of games that Ville Heinola played for the Jets this year?
Sorry, Ken, anyone ask that again? I needed the volume turned up here a little. Sorry.
No problem. Just when it comes to Ville Heinola, what role did the Ville Heinola entry-level slide, if any, play in the number of games he played for the Jets this year?
Yeah, none. We really didn't even focus on that at all. It was something that, again, I told everyone in the organization that was not a factor in any decision-making process. That being said, Ville played 50 games this year. Over the course of his development, he was fortunate to start his season in Liga and then come over, play in the World Juniors. Got caught up a little bit on the quarantine side of things, coming from World Juniors to the Jets. And then obviously the quarantining and the different movement restrictions that we had, this year, came into play with some forms of deployment with him. At times we felt it was important that he was with the Jets and that next option to go in, because putting him on a private jet and chartering him in from different places wasn't going to be an option to keep him with the Moose. We had a real challenge this year, much different than a lot of other teams. We had obviously the Moose playing here in Winnipeg, which was very, very good. But generally speaking, the ability to move players back and forth only existed when we were in the same city. So when we were at home and they were on the road, moving players back and forth was very difficult. And it unfortunately led to some players maybe sitting out games at different points in times, and that's what I was alluding to at the at the trade deadline, was that it's important to try to get players playing whatever level that they're at, whether it was Ville or Vess or Toninato or Noje. It was a tough year for those players, that we were mandated to have a taxi squad. And at several times when you fall below the number, the league would call you and say, hey, you've got to call up another player. And unfortunately that meant call up another player to sit on the sidelines.
We'll go next to Murat Atesh from The Athletic. Go ahead, Murat.
Thanks, Gregor. Hi, Kevin. I wanted to follow up on that notion of the taxi squad and Ville Heinola. As specifically a guy who I remember at the trade deadline, you suggested, well, that was an example of a guy from within who might be able to help down the stretch. And I know that you've just listed some of the challenges, but how do you feel? Will you look back on the usage of the taxi squad and his low games played as one example with any sense of, regret going forward?
Well, I think that, again, I think he played 50 games. That's probably the most games that he's actually played in his career. I think the year before in league, I think he played, roughly 30 games. So he did have a really good opportunity this year, I think, to develop much more than actually most players. Players playing in the American League this year had 32 games. He managed to get roughly half of that. In the American League, he got some NHL games. This was a challenging year, not just for Ville Heinola, but for everybody from a development standpoint. You look at the OHL this year, and all those players never got a chance to play. So I think again, you do what you can. We put everyone in the best opportunity to have an opportunity to play for the Jets if that was going to be what was in the cards for them. And at different points in time, like until the end of the year, we were extremely healthy, which shouldn't be apologetic for, which is great, and I think one of the challenges going into this season, and when you looked at the schedule and you looked at the unprecedented road schedule that that we had in front of us, where I think it was the hardest road stretch I think in 40 years, or someone was telling me that that we were faced with. Management of players' bodies and injuries and stuff like that, I think was paramount. So I think that a real credit and a real the players took care of themselves. They found a way to stay healthy. I think our training staff, did a really good job of making sure players stayed healthy, which, sometimes when a player gets hurt, that's an opportunity for someone else to come in. So you can't script those kind of things. But, again, in going back to your original question of Villy, I do think that, he really developed in a lot of different ways, because he went back 2 years ago, or 2 years ago, to play in Liga, and so he didn't really get a chance to play the North American game and come over here and establish himself in North America. And this year, was his first opportunity to come over here and play that North American style of game.
We'll go back to Murat for a follow-up. Go ahead, Murat.
Thanks, Gregor. Just following up on the notion of health. I mean, some of your really heart and soul guys played through an awful lot of things this year. There was a reference to Blake Wheeler playing for some time with cracked ribs on the top line. I think Nathan Beaulieu played top pairing minutes with a torn labrum in his shoulder. And I mean, those are things that I can't even begin to imagine what that feels like. And that's their personal decision and all of those sorts of things. But I guess my question is, how does that reconcile with the idea that your team stayed so healthy that it kept some of the young guys out?
Well, again, players in hockey in general are notorious for playing through lots of things. We were very, very fortunate this year to have, players that, found a way to, to compete and help us try and win. Like we went through a very long period of time this year where we didn't lose back-to-back games. And it was because, these players, put it out there. They really, sacrificed all those kind of things, because in a shortened season, I think when we first sat down at the beginning of the year, we talked about, you better get out and sprint. Like, this is not going to be a marathon. You have to sprint right from the beginning. And in order to make the playoffs in a shortened season like this, you couldn't afford to have too many bad stretches. Now, if you look back at all the different teams, certainly I guess we tended to really just focus on our division, because that's the only teams that you played on. So I guess I can't really comment on what a lot of the other teams in the other divisions went through. But if you look at our division, every team went through a little bit of a stretch of a downturn. We lost, we went on our losing streak there at the end of the year. Other teams, went on different losing streaks, at different points in time. And that kind of, leveled a lot of the different things out. But if you don't get out of the gates and you don't sprint and you don't, have that streak of not losing back-to-back games, you have players that, maybe can't go because of a this or a that, and it sends you in the wrong direction. You don't make the playoffs. And so again, we were very, very thankful that of how these guys competed and put the team ahead of themselves on many different occasions.
We'll go next to Ted Wyman from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Ted.
Afternoon, Kevin. How would you assess the job performance of Paul Maurice and the coaching staff this year?
Well, I think that, again, it's first and foremost, you have to look at, I guess, how prepared we were coming into the season. I think you'd have to look back and see, what the coaching staff did to, get a game plan to approach this unprecedented time. We obviously are in the world of COVID. I think that, as a team, we had, I think it was 160 some straight days where, we had a swab, shoved up our nose to, make sure that we were COVID, tested and COVID, COVID free. Those are the psychological things that the coaches, I think, have to have a game plan for. And for that, I think they were exemplary, and I think they were outstanding. So then you look at the body of work. I think that the year itself, the games. I think I touched on it a little bit. Finding a way to not go back-to-back losses for such a long period of time. I think that really gave us a real chance to stay in that fight and end up being that team that could have finished anywhere from second to fourth. We touched on first for a little while there, but again, realistically, it could have finished anywhere in that regard. So I thought, again, the body of work during the season. You look at our goals for, you look at our goals against. Our goals for are slightly up, from the year prior. Our goals against are slightly down, from the year prior. You look at the power play, the penalty kill power play, ran in the top third, for most of the year. I think we finished, seventh or sixth or seventh or something like that. You look at the penalty kill, which I think was a point that we talked about last year, in this year end kind of conference, video conference or whatever it was. Our penalty kill improved, year over year. So, when you start to dissect all those things, then, there's certainly areas that we did improve. Obviously, the game plan that went into to beating Edmonton was something that again, players definitely need to take credit in buying into how they played, and coaches have a great opportunity to take credit for devising a plan that everyone bought into. Now, when you're not sitting here with the silver trophy beside you, everyone is certainly critical in the end, and probably no people more critical than the coaches themselves. And I know that they're going to soul search to see how they're going to continue to get better as a group. But overall, I thought they represented the Winnipeg Jets and gave them the best opportunity that we had to try and win. So I thought they did a good job.
We'll go back to Ted from the Sun. Go ahead, Ted.
Thank you for that, Kevin. While I'm asking you to assess people, could you give us a thought on Pierre-Luc Dubois' season?
So, again, I had an opportunity to sit down with Pierre-Luc here in the exit meetings, probably really the first chance that I've had to sit down with him, that I was, I guess, really allowed to sit down with him as a, within the rules of COVID and stuff like that. So we had a good opportunity to talk about the year, talk about his year, and certainly I think it was a challenging one for him. I think he'll be the first to tell you that he can be better and will be better, and I firmly believe that having him here from the start of training camp next year will produce a different result. And he's a talented young player that went through a really tough time and a tough year, and I think if you look back at players' careers, they're going to have up years and down years, and for him, I think this is going to be a learning moment, and will help him become a better player and person and professional. Like when you struggle at different points in time, I think it helps you to reassess and reevaluate and then reassert yourself. So I got nothing but full confidence that that's how it's going to play out for Pierre-Luc.
We'll go next to Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks very much, Gregor. Afternoon, Kevin. This is our first chance to ask you about Mark Scheifele's suspension, and obviously that was a significant change in the second round series. You had a unique perspective, I believe, in that you would have sat in, I guess, on the hearing. Can you just maybe give us your assessment of that play and obviously the ramifications of it?
Well, certainly, first and foremost, I think I want to say I'm grateful that Jake is starting to skate again and is recovering, and we were very, very I don't know what the right word is, thankful, I guess, that we had heard right after the game had ended that he didn't have to go to the hospital, and that he was while stretchered off the ice, he was up and moving around and in the dressing room, and was functioning normally and everything like that. So for that, we're really, really grateful, because you never want to see a player get injured, and communicated that to Marc Bergevin as well. So but from the play itself, I did have a unique perspective, because I did sit in on the hearing, and I did look at a lot of different things and a lot of different areas of it. I looked long and hard at the standard of charging and what escalated it to a suspension type of penalty. And I think, and I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to spend the time to look at the videos that the NHL produces, not so much the suspension hearings themselves, although you can look at those too, because they do have some commonality when players have been suspended for charging. But looking at the definition itself, and they talked about the escalation of a charging penalty to a suspension is when a player leaves his feet, launches himself into the opponent. Certainly distance traveled is certainly something that's talked about, but in this case here, my firm belief is that both players actually traveled the same distance. One was skating to go pick up the puck and come around the net and make a play. One was skating on a back check. If you look purely on distance traveled, every time that you would forecheck on a player, technically then you're charging if you go and hit a player technically. So there's a lot of technicalities that come into play. I think that if you look at player and puck tracking, and you listen to Mark Scheifele's explanation of what was going through his mind, at that time, Mark Scheifele at the top of the circles decreased his speed by 20%, coming in because he was looking to see whether the player was going to spin and go back, from to the other post or come around the post. So he was making himself available, to go at either side. And then if you continue on, and they talk about it in the suspension video itself with Mark, the player is allowed to be hit. Now, again, the level of force and stuff like that is hard to judge. If you look at the play itself, I think that it's 0.8 seconds from the time that the player picks up the puck behind the net to the point of impact. 0.8 seconds in a game that a player has to make a decision. If you further look at the video, and the contention that the puck was already in net, it's 0.2 seconds that the puck crosses the line to the point of impact. And then further, if you look at the point of impact, the player's head, clearly is not the first point of contact. It's the shoulder into the body. And certainly did it potentially ride up and have some head contact, I guess possibly, but like it says in the suspension video, that happens in course of impact all the time. But so that's basically I guess my interpretation and my analysis of what transpired.
Go next to Joey Slattery from CTV Winnipeg. Go ahead, Joey.
Thanks, Gregor. Hi, Kevin. You touched on it earlier, talking about the Ontario Hockey League not playing, and even the other leagues' very limited sample size. In fact, talking to Cole Perfetti yesterday, he talked about how fortunate he felt that he was able to play, that a lot of his teammates back in Saginaw lost a year of development. So
right.
With that all in mind, going ahead and preparing for the draft, how tough is this year with that small sample size, looking at potential prospects? And what's, I guess, the confidence level in these picks this year with that in mind?
Well, it's going to come down to, the confidence level that you have in your staff. Certainly, we feel we've got, one of the best amateur staffs in the game. We've got a group that is very cohesive. We have a real strong, I guess, sense of what we want in players and how we evaluate them and how we rank them. So we're going to, obviously rely on that strength. Lots of video. You're gonna go back over video from years past, and in some cases there obviously with some of the OHL players, but it's going to be a challenge. There's no question. But I guess it's an equal challenge for all the teams, and we'll spend a lot of time in the coming month here getting ready for that, and we'll have lots of conversations on trying to make that list, but there's no question we're all going to look back at this draft several years from now and really wonder or not wonder, see how it all plays out, because there could be some wild cards, and there could be some wild misses too.
We'll go back to Joey Slattery. Go ahead, Joey.
And just to follow up, I mean, internally with your team this year, you mentioned, you had a chance to talk to Pierre-Luc Dubois for really the first time since he was traded. Your role this year, what were the challenges, above and beyond your typical year? when it came to dealing with players in terms of maybe even being further away than normal? How difficult was this year for you to maneuver, especially when you look at the other duties as assigned, if you will?
Yeah, it was very unique, and you tried to be respectful because obviously you always, one of the weird things of how this year played out, and I was talking to a couple of staff members here today, is you were always worried about being that person that took your team down. Like you're always worried about, if you caught, COVID and it spread to your team, what would that do? So you were always very, very mindful of that, and it was because how hard these players, trained and what they went through and what they had to go through on a daily basis, in order to, play the game. So when, what you didn't want as the managers to be, that guy that took everybody down. So you were respectful of that. You stayed, a little, 9 feet away instead of 6 feet away type thing, and exaggerated that a little bit. But so that's where, again, you relied on the coaches, you relied on the leadership of the team, the players themselves. And that's, generally though, how you have to manage, because once they're in that room, that's their room, that's their sanctity. And again, I thought our group, handled all those things, including the adversity of having a losing streak like we did, and then coming out on the other side and really focusing in on what it, took to beat Edmonton. And even in the end, it's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow, but again, the Montreal Canadiens deserve, full credit for what they did, in their series as well.
We'll go next to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hi, Kevin. You talked about being happy or thought the coaching staff did a good job. I'm wondering, I know no one's ever happy, fully happy until you're hoisting the Stanley Cup, but do you view this season as a success, or how would you classify it?
Well, again, if you're looking for a black or white, type of situation, success or failure, certainly I do deem this, from a success standpoint. But if you look at it from an ultimate end goal, we've got to get better. There's no question about it. Like, we have to find ways, whether, again, it's something that you challenge yourself all the time, and there's no, you're never really truly satisfied or truly successful in your own mind unless you do win the cup. And again, I've been fortunate to be on that side of it, where you do get to say, hey, we did it. But again, more so than not, there's times where you say we've got to get better, and we're going to have to spend all summer and approach training camp in that same fashion. As a group, as an organization, you're always, striving for that. As a coaching staff, I know they're going to sit back and say, what can we be better at? Because again, you want to take that to the next level, or else you wouldn't be part of this game.
We'll go back to Sean Reynolds for a follow-up. Go ahead, Sean.
So Kevin, coaching staff looks at the things that they can do to be better. Your player personnel, and I don't want you to give me your whole blueprint, but I don't want to put words in Paul's mouth, but he'd said something about being thin on defense the last 2 years. Is that something that has to be addressed this summer to get to what you're talking about, improving and getting to that ultimate goal?
Well, I think if you look at, again, you look at how these teams have evolved over time, and whether it's cap situations or players deciding to retire, those are things that as an organization we were faced with, and we, have to find ways to address that. And it doesn't just happen overnight, whether it's a young player that, matures into that role, or whether it's a trade, or whether it's free agency. Again, you're always looking at different ways, to continue to improve. I do think that, the group of players that we had on defense this year, I guess, complemented each other and found a way to do that and to complement each other. You looked at different things coming into the season, and not many people, I think, thought that we were going to achieve what we achieved, this year. I think a lot of people looked at our team and said that, they've got some good forwards. They've got some guys on defense that, we'll see how it all plays out. They got a great goaltender. But you know what? I'm not sure that they're going to make the playoffs. And I think that was pretty much the general consensus of this group going in. Fortunately, the group of 20 to 25 players and 6 or 7 coaches in that room didn't listen to that and went out, made the playoffs, had an exceptional first round, and we'll have to find a way to make sure we can grow from there.
We'll go next to Kelly Moore from 680 CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you, Gregor. Good afternoon, Kevin. You mentioned that you saw this season as a success, but even if it had been regress, how careful do you have to be as management when you've gone, starting with the bubble into the present, when you review everything that's gone on because of the abnormalcy? Do you tend to view things a little differently than you would had it been normal?
Well, I think you can look at that 2 ways. I don't think you want to underestimate, the different things that might have occurred because of COVID, but I don't think you want to totally gloss over the fact that, again, you have to look critically at a lot of different things. There's going to be changes on this team. There are some young guys that are, potentially knocking on the door. There's some veteran players that, may or may not be back. There's different opportunities. There's obviously the expansion draft that, we have to be mindful of that, we're probably going to lose a good player. And that's just a matter of fact. So, there's lots of different areas that I think you're going to spend time evaluating on and give certain weight to the, unusual circumstances that we're under. But I do think that, you can't just gloss over things because of that.
We'll go next to Sarah Oleski from TSN. Go ahead, Sarah.
Kevin, just wondering if you could give us an update on Brian Little's status right now.
So Brian obviously, has gone through a lot of, different, medical procedures, and until the doctors or Brian, ever really feel comfortable, with updating or upgrading his status, he basically remains a player that is not available to us. So he's, I'm not, certain that, you would use the words, retirement, but in the same token, there's really a medical, there's no medical opinions. Basically, they're saying that he should play.
We'll go back to Sarah Oleski. Go ahead, Sarah.
Just with respect to augmenting your roster for this upcoming season, do you anticipate being aggressive, whether it be through free agency or trying through trades?
Certainly we're going to look at it. I think the biggest thing, that it's going to come in stages this year, because I think if you look at, if history dictates anything, that, when you're leading up to the expansion draft, there's lots of protection rules. There's lots of things that, you have to satisfy, and you can only protect so many. So trading for someone that would put you in a protection issue, comes at a double cost. Obviously the cost of acquisition of the player, but then the cost that might, expose a player that you might lose. So I do think that there's going to be different stages of the summer, and different, different things in that regard moving forward. The flat cap for this coming year and potentially for a little while yet, I think that's going to have an impact again on the free agency side of things. Because again, we've got some contracts that we do need to take care of ourselves, obviously on the RFA side. So there's lots of work in that regard that'll dictate what we have available to be, aggressive or not, if there's players that fit that mold. So it's not much different than any other summer, I think, in those regards. You've got your internal business to take care of. You've got this, obviously the difference is the expansion draft. Will you have to replace a hole that's created because of the player that you lose? That remains to be seen. But you'll look at all the different options available to you to try and move that forward, including internally with young player development.
We'll go back to Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weber.
Just on that expansion theme, Kevin, because of the experience you had and the time in between, will you approach it any differently, or are the volume of calls up, or what can you tell us about how the process maybe is similar or different to when Vegas entered the league?
Well, I think in general, as managements, it doesn't come as a surprise now. The rules are, the same as they were. for Vegas coming in. I think that you've known that for a while now. I think managers have probably spent time constructing their rosters and handing out no trade or no move clauses to to players much more judiciously than maybe they did in the past, which I think caused a lot of teams issues. I think there's probably a greater acceptance by managers to know that you are going to lose a good player. It is what it is, so will there'll be the volume of side deals and trades and non-trades that happened in past. I guess it remains to be seen, but every situation is going to be different. Every organization is going to approach things differently depending on, I guess, their cycle and maybe what they have coming within their system to augment or develop a player to fill that hole. So it'll be an interesting time. It's an important piece, and we'll spend a lot of time looking at our situation and as well as others, and see if what may or may not transpire there.
We'll go next to Jason Bell from the Free Press. Go ahead, Jason.
Thanks, Gregor. Thanks, Kevin. I think some of us were a little surprised the other day at the exit interviews with the media that a veteran like Matthew Pro wasn't available, and it could have been nothing other than maybe just time constraints. Or I'm just wondering, is that any kind of a hint that possibly he is not going to be pursued to return? And would you also talk to other camps already about guys that you're not pursuing?
So again, as far as who we're going to pursue and not pursue, obviously we'll keep that internally, and we'll see how things progress. Obviously Matthew's had 7 good years here, and he gave all he had in within that. As far as his media availability, I don't know. I think there was 16 guys available or 17 guys available. So it becomes probably a function of how long you can keep a guy in the room on exit day, really, who's around and who's not around. So I wouldn't read anything into it one way or another.
Okay, thanks.
Final question, Murat Atesh from The Athletic. Go ahead, Murat.
Thanks, Gregor. Hello again, Kevin.
Yeah.
I was looking at some of the biggest successes that you guys have included a lot of really, really good players on ELCs. And you've been such a good draft and development organization for a long time. You're looking at, I think, 4 draft picks in this summer's draft, and haven't had a lot of them recently. Is there work to be done, or how do you get back to that being the leading driver behind Winnipeg Jets' success?
It's a great question. There's a real fine balance between, throwing everything and putting all your chips in the middle each and every year. And it's exciting at the trade deadline to do that. It's certainly, once you've traded 1 first-round pick, you just go, let's just do it again, and we had success, obviously, trading for Stas that first time. And, so you keep on, doing it. But then when you're sitting at the table on draft day and your scouts are looking at you going, we love that guy, and we love this guy, and we love that guy, then then you get the angst, from a management standpoint of, man, I got to go try and get some picks. And it's interesting, and we talk about it all the time. At the trade deadline, you can throw a first-round pick like it's nothing, and come the night before the draft, the first-round picks are like gold. So the value of draft currency, as the years, progresses, it varies so much. And it's such a fascinating thing, really, on the management side to hear those words roll off your tongue about trading a pick, and then, looking, sitting in on the meetings with the scouts and, realizing the value of the pick. And then if you truly look at how we built these teams and the time that it's taken, and that it does come through draft picks. So, you look at your prospect pool, and there does feel like at points in time, like we built up one of the best prospect pools through the draft. They graduate, they come into your lineup, they make impacts. You hit on a couple of late round picks. You hit on a goalie that, in a late round pick that is, one of your scouts comes in and says, I know I went to watch this guy here, but the guy that I saw, kind of at that camp next to him, like that's the guy that really, really intrigues me. that's the fun. That's what drives, you know, the management side of things is you know, having those things, you know, come to fruition. But they don't just happen. They come from hard work. They come from miles and miles and days of scouts, you know, scouring and being away from their families. They come from, you know, developing, you know, having a development group that cares about the players and you know, truly relishes when they, you know, get their, you know, it's probably, you know, they're probably only more prouder person, you know, than the parents of a young player is the scouts and the development side when they, you know, go and play their first game. And it comes from having the conviction to say, you know, we've got a goalie making $4 million. We're going to put him in the minors because we think that, you know, this young goalie needs the net and he needs that chance to run and to, you know, to prove himself. And yeah, you're selling it to your veteran players at that time that, look, you know, we're going to be better when this player gets that experience to play. And, you know, we're going to sacrifice, you know, maybe winning right now to play that player. And, you know, so you take pride in all those kind of things because development of a player, development of an organization doesn't happen overnight. You know, you can't just rely on you know, throwing money against the walls on free agency to think that you're going to develop an organization that, you know, can try to win on a regular basis. And, you know, again, we've been fortunate to you know, to make the playoffs over the last couple of years, and you know, that's because I think that, you know, we're all pulling in that same direction: coaches, management, ownership, scouting, player development, players, and that's something I'm proud of.
Thanks very much, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Hope you all enjoy your summer. Thank you very much.
Oh, actually, hey, Gregor.
Yep.
You know, before everyone leaves, I actually, there is one thing I do want to say. I do want to thank all of you for the job that you have done. I can only imagine how tough this year must have been for you. We talk about the players and we talk about the coaches, but I really do. My hat goes off to all of you for how, you know, all of you have handled this COVID year in professional sports. And, you know, at some point in time, we will get back to normal. But the quickest way for us to do that, and again, is to get vaccinated. And that really is something that I think is, you know, as Manitobans here, I'm excited that, you know, we are taking that up, and I look forward to, you know, the time where we can look each other in the eyes because, you know, we got vaccinated and got back to normal. So please, everyone, stay safe, and again, thank you for all the work that you as the media have done, an important part of this year.
Thanks very much for that, Kevin.
Yeah, guys, it's just Brownie here. I just want to repeat what Kevin said and what Gregor said. I want to thank you guys for all of your cooperation and patience throughout the year. I know it was a long year at times, and we tried to work together as best we could. But just wanted to say thank you again. And if you have any questions of anything, don't feel free to reach out, and don't hesitate. And we'll try to work through what the next coming steps are in the next couple of months in terms of the draft, which, as we all know, will be virtual again. So we'll work forward in the next steps. And again, thank you for everything that you guys have done and putting up with a very unique situation, and something we hope we don't have to repeat again in the near future. Thank you, guys. Have a good summer. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, guys.